Columns and rows are two of the most fundamental widgets you'll use when building apps. And that because most apps are just widgets either stacked on top of one another, columns, or next to each other, rows. So if you come to Instagram right here, you see that these images actually stack from top to bottom. So this is a column, and then you have the foot, where this is a row, so you have widgets stacked next to each other, so from left to right. So in this video, we're going to do a deep dive into these widgets, learn how to use them, customize them, and so on. First, we have the column widget, and the column widget arranges its children vertically. So it's commonly used to display multiple widgets, one below another. So for example, if I had a container, or if I had maybe an image inside and let's say a text, you'll see that elements are being aligned from top to bottom. So let's go ahead again and add a column on the page. And the first most important thing that you need to understand about columns and rows is that they have two main axes. So you have the main axis alignment, and for the column it's going to be from top to bottom, and then you have the cross axis alignment. So for the column as well, it's going to be from left to the right. Let's go ahead and maybe add a row inside. And now you can see that the main axis alignment has changed because this is a row. So the main axis alignment starts from left to right, and the cross axis alignment starts from top to bottom. And we're covering both columns and rows in this lesson because fundamentally they're the same thing, just opposite. So columns vertical and rows horizontal. And let's take a look at some of these properties. So the first one we've got is our main axis. This property tells your column whether it should try to fill out its space on its main axis. So here we have vertical, and that's what we've got selected right now. Or you can use the minimum amount of space, and we're going to show you how this works. So let me add a container and change the background color to blue, a color that I can see. And now you can see that if you go back and select column, you can see that the main axis alignment is telling it, hey, use the maximum amount of size on the main axis. So expand to fill available space, and the available space is this right here. So from top to bottom. And if I were to select minimum axis size, this means it's going to shrink and only have the size of its widget. Okay, so let's take a look at some more of these properties that are on our main axis alignment. So first we have start. So start is selected, so it places our container at the start of our column. And of course you have end, so it places our container at the end of our column. And then we have center, which makes sense because it actually places our widget or our container in the center of the column. So our next one is space evenly. So if I press space evenly, you're actually not going to see anything, but let me try to actually duplicate this widget by pressing Command D. And you can see that the space available is actually distributed evenly between the two containers. The next one, we have space around, and you can see the slight change between these two. Now let me just go ahead and add another container and make that blue as well. Good. Finally, we have another alignment, which is space between. So it's going to push the first element to the start, the last element to the end, and then whatever else is going to be in the center. So now we have our cross axis alignment. We can put on the far left, we can center, or on the far right, and then we're going to have the stretch, which we'll talk about later on. So I'm going to set it to center, but we have a problem, right? Because right now the width of our column is determined by children, and all of our children are the same width. So if we were to do any of these changes right here, we actually wouldn't see anything. But in order to demonstrate this, I'm just going to go ahead and create an invisible container. So I'm going to add a container here, give it some height of, let's say, 10, and just stretch it. Great. So now we can see the changes. We've selected center. If we want, you can put it on the end or far right. What if we wanted for these containers to actually stretch or fit the entire width of the column? We could go ahead and actually make them, to stretch infinitely. So take up the maximum width. But there's another easier way to do this. And so I'm just going to command Z to undo everything that I've done and go to the column itself, and you have stretch here. So if you stretch, they're actually stretching its children, as you can see here. Stretch, make children fit the cross axis so that you can make them the best versions of themselves, I guess. Great. We're almost done with our column. We've got one more property which is also very important, and that is our scrollable property. So you can find it here. By default, it turns off. But if we turn it on, we're going to see that two things have happened. First, it will shrink wrap the children well. Why does it do this? This is because our column has alignment options, right? And with those options, you're telling your column what to do with its extra space here. But if you're allowing it to scroll, that extra space has changed from just being the extra space on the screen to being potentially infinite. So now, it's still not allowing us to scroll. Well, it's allowing us to scroll, but you cannot see. Let me just, in order for me to demonstrate this, let me just wrap this into a container. So, Command B, container, and this container automatically is going to take the height of the column. So I'm going to make it short. I'm going to give it maybe 200 pixels. And now you can actually see now that the column is scrolling. Let me just change the color of this container so that you can see what we are doing. Great. So if I were to go and preview this, let me just go back. You can see that it's actually allowing us to scroll. All right, let's go back. Another way to do this is just to say, I'm going to remove the 200 here and just make this a little bit longer. So I'm going to stretch this one as well so that it can overflow on the screen. I'm going to change the color of this to success because we are successful, and go back and review this again. Boom. So now we can scroll up and down. Okay, so that's it for columns, but what about rows? Well, remember they're basically the same thing, just opposite. So we can fly through this very fast because we already understand everything about columns. Right, so based on everything that we've learned about columns, it's time for a challenge now. So I'm going to need you to go ahead in FlutterFlow and create something like this. So instead of using a column, use a row. And you should have the ability to scroll. Instead of scrolling vertically, you're going to scroll horizontally. So pause the video now and try to complete this challenge. Right. I really hope you gave that challenge a really good go. So there are two ways we can actually achieve this. So the first one is by deleting this column and then creating a row. So I'm going to do that. Just now go ahead and delete this, it's gone, and then I'm going to add a row inside, and then we're going to add the three containers. So one, I'm going to go ahead, duplicate, and then I'm going to change the color of this to blue. The second one going to be green, and then the third one going to be yellow. Great. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this some width so that it can overflow. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe say 200. It's the same thing as stretching really. And then I'm going to stretch this one just because I don't have enough space. So I'm going to give it 200 as well. And then the third one, I'm going to give it 200. But if you go ahead and actually preview this, just gonna go back. you will see that it doesn't scroll. And why? This is because we didn't enable scrolling on this row. So I'm going to go back and say scrollable. So that's activated. I'm going to go back and just refresh this. And just go back a little bit. And now we can scroll successfully. All right, so that's the first way. The second way is actually easier. So I'm going to go Command Z just to go back to where I was with the columns. And here we have our columns. And I'm going to go to the column here. I'm just going to press Command G just to replace the widget. So right now it's a column. I'm going to replace it with a row. So once I press replace, it's going to change the direction. So from column to row. And then I'm just going to go ahead and edit the containers. So instead of 400 height, it's going to be 100. And then 400 width. Same thing here. 400 width, 100 height. And then 400 width, 100 height. And then I'm going to push it on the top. Scrolling should be enabled. And if I preview this, good. So now it's doing what you wanted it to do. And that's it. So in the next lesson, we're going to be talking about containers. So for that and more, I'll catch you in the next one.